About 7 months ago, I discovered that my wife had been cheating on me. The initial shock was overwhelming, and the pain hit me like a ton of bricks. I went through all the classic stages: denial, confusion, and immense emotional pain. For a while, I even tried the pick-me approach, attempting to win her back or make things work, but nothing seemed to get through. I was in a state of deep depression, and I didn't know how to process any of it. I didn't confront her directly. I think, at some point, I was hoping that maybe I could ignore it and somehow find a way to fix things on my own, but I was far too broken to do anything of the sort. For months, I remained in this fog. I assumed she knew I knew. She must have sensed my distance, but she never seemed to care. I was completely lost in the pain and didn't have the energy to confront her, so I just carried on. Then, around 2 or 3 months ago, something shifted within me. I reached a point where I was done with her, done with the marriage, done with everything. I had completely checked out emotionally. I stopped caring altogether. My focus turned to preparing for the inevitable divorce. I didn't want to be in the same house with her anymore. I started avoiding her as much as possible, staying out of the house when I knew she'd be home. When we did interact, I kept my answers short and blunt: yes, no, maybe, or I don't know. I didn't want to engage. I even made sure that the divorce lawyer's bills were left out in the open. She must have noticed. In fact, our kids began to notice too. One day, they asked me about the divorce. I gave them the only answer I could, trying to explain that sometimes grown-ups can't stay together, no matter how much they love their kids. My wife was actually in the room when I had this conversation, and her silence spoke volumes. She didn't comment or object. To me, it felt like she was silently agreeing with what was happening. Then, just a few days ago, I reconnected with a woman from my past. I'll call her Monica. We had always shared this undeniable chemistry when we were in school together. We'd flirted, shared touches, but we'd never taken things any further. Monica and her family had moved away before we could act on anything, and I always regretted not pursuing something with her. I had completely let that chapter go over the years, but when we met again, it was like the spark between us had never dimmed. The tension was palpable, stronger than I remembered. She asked me out and I explained my situation. I told her about my marriage and that I wanted to be officially separated before I started dating anyone. Monica was understanding and respected that boundary. She gave me her number and we agreed to reconnect when I was ready. She told me she had never married and was eager to get to know me again. I felt a mix of excitement and relief, like something I had longed for had been reawakened. That meeting pushed me to finally confront my wife and move forward with the divorce. I went home that evening, feeling almost giddy in a way I hadn't felt in months. I waited for her to come home and then asked her to sit down. I told her that I knew about the affair. I explained that I had assumed she knew I knew, especially considering how I had emotionally checked out of our relationship over the past few months. I told her I was ready to move on, to start dating, and to begin the divorce process. I ended the conversation by asking her if she agreed that it was time for us to part ways. Her reaction was nothing like I expected. Instead of being relieved or angry, she broke down in tears. And it wasn't just a regular cry. It was this desperate, gut-wrenching sound that I've never heard from her before. She began to beg, making excuses for her affair, telling me it didn't mean anything, and pleading for another chance. She suggested counseling, claiming we could fix everything if we tried. I was stunned. I had expected her to be happy, maybe even relieved that I was finally ready to move on, but instead, she seemed to be fighting for the marriage in that moment. I didn't understand it. I told her that she could go be with the man she had been seeing without guilt, because clearly, he meant more to her than our family. I told her that if she truly cared about me, she wouldn't have betrayed me in this way. Her actions spoke louder than her words. I explained that if she wanted to save our marriage, she should have done it 7 months ago, before the affair started. At that point, it was too late. The damage was done. I didn't believe our marriage had any problems. But if there were, she never communicated them to me. I couldn't fix something I didn't even know was broken. I told her that she must have known the consequences of her actions, how it would affect our children, our family, and our lives. If she truly thought the affair was worth it, then she had accepted that our family would be broken. I calmly told her that I no longer had any feelings of attachment. The pain she had caused me over these past months had changed me. I wasn't angry, but I was indifferent, and if I'm honest, I didn't even know if I could ever truly forgive her. At that point, she became completely incoherent, rambling about nothing, and I could no longer make sense of what she was saying. I was done. I called her sister, explained the situation, and her sister came over to take her away. As soon as they left, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. I could finally breathe again after months of living in this emotional fog. But even though I felt relief, I still don't understand her motives. She must have known that her affair would lead to divorce. She's beautiful, smart, and our marriage had been good up until this point. Now she's pretending like she still wants us to be a family, but what's her real motivation? What could she possibly think she would gain by trying to rekindle something at this point? She can't truly expect me to reconcile with her after everything, can she? I'm just trying to figure out what's going on in her head. Is she afraid of the consequences? Is she worried I'll tell people about her affair? Or is she trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty for the sake of saving face? I don't know. What I do know is that I'm moving on. I'm focusing on being there for our kids, making sure they understand that none of this is their fault. As for Monica, I'm excited about where things could go, but I'm also taking things slowly. I'm not going to rush into anything with her. There's a lot I need to sort out first, but she's been understanding of my situation, and that means a lot. At the end of the day, I'm not apologizing for how I've handled this. My trust was broken, and I had no choice but to walk away. I've tried to be as civil as possible, not for her, but for the sake of our children. I won't let them see the hurt that was caused by their mother's choices. I'm just done, and I'm moving on. I had a chance to respond to everyone, but I didn't. Over the past few days, I've tried to read everything I posted, especially after the difficult conversation with my soon-to-be ex-wife. I hadn't slept much, and in fact, I passed out while reading messages on my computer. When I woke up the next day, there was a strange imprint from the keyboard on my face. At least my mind was clearer, and I decided it was time to make a plan. I started by creating lists of pros and cons for the key issues I was facing. I gathered papers and stuck them to the wall, each with a headline. The kids, how to behave when meeting the wife, my marriage, questions to ask my wife, and so on. The final document ended up being too long to retype here, so I will just summarize the main points. My goal was to figure out the core principles I want to live by, and what the most important things are that I need to focus on. I then evaluated each issue, asking myself whether I could achieve something meaningful from it, and if I could, what a meaningful result might look like. For the kids, they are my number one priority. I've decided to increase my efforts to support them through this difficult time. I'll arrange individual counseling, family counseling, and plan trips to spend more quality time with them. I want to help them make new memories that aren't overshadowed by the pain of the situation. I'll also involve my family in this process to surround them with love and care. Additionally, I'm planning to talk to their teachers and coaches, ensuring they have a strong support system in place. I don't want them to feel alone in this. I also got an STI test and scheduled DNA testing for the kids. The idea that they might not be mine is extremely uncomfortable for me, but I need to be sure for their sake. If they're not mine, there may be medical history they need to know about. What if they want to find their real father someday? How will they view me if I don't act now and ensure they are mine? I won't feel at peace until I have confirmation one way or the other. After talking to their therapist separately, I spoke to them together and explained everything carefully. I encouraged them to ask as many questions as they wanted. I repeatedly told them that they could come to me with anything, that I am their dad, and I love them more than anything. I made it clear that I will always be there for them, no matter what they need forever. As for my marriage, I came to a painful conclusion. I can never trust my wife again. Without trust, a relationship is impossible. I also realized that I no longer love her. The person she has become is unrecognizable to me, and the love I once felt for her is gone. Before her affair, my love for her was a big part of me, but that was destroyed. I'm not sure if I could ever learn to love her again, but even if that were possible, I would have to want it, and right now I don't. It's better to end it and move on with our lives. I no longer want this marriage, this relationship, or her. The part of me that once felt endless joy and happiness when thinking about her is now filled with dread and memories of pain. The mere thought of her brings discomfort. Divorce now feels inevitable, and I want it to happen as quickly as possible. As for Monica, I had a lot of doubts. Based on the feedback I received here, I wasn't sure jumping into a new relationship was the right thing to do. My life was a mess, and I didn't want to bring her into that. She disagreed, however. She said life is messy, and we should see how we handle it together. While we were dating, I learned that she had been engaged years ago, but her fiancé tragically died in a work accident. This loss devastated her. Since then, although she's dated a few people, she hasn't formed a strong connection with anyone. She now believes that life is too short, and you have to take risks when real opportunities present themselves. I explained to her that I didn't want to start anything until after the divorce was official, as I didn't want to cheat while still married. She respected that. I also brought up how it might look if we suddenly became an item in public. It could easily be portrayed that she was the one who broke up the marriage. She agreed, and we decided to wait a little while after the divorce is official before pursuing anything further. Despite the strong pull I feel towards Monica, I've decided not to contact her again until I completed the legal separation. We agreed that I would get my affairs in order and then reach out to her when I was ready. We would see where things stand then. When it came to preparing for the conversation with my wife, I wrote down the principles I wanted to uphold. I knew I had to stay calm and avoid being cruel. The purpose of the conversation was to move forward, to figure out how to co-parent as effectively as possible for the sake of our children. I also prepared a list of questions, hoping to understand her thinking during the affair and what she wanted for the future. I wasn't going to lie to her or give her false hope about reconciliation. I made it clear I wouldn't engage in any deceitful games just to get a postnup or other benefits in the divorce. My goal was to be as fair as possible. I would divide the assets equally, and we would share 50-50 custody of the kids. Even though she had hurt me deeply, I wasn't going to act out of spite. I wanted to ensure that I could stand by my actions today, tomorrow, and even 20 years from now. I still have strong feelings of anger toward her for what she did to us, and our children. But I also cherish the good memories we had before everything fell apart. I love our children, and I will always love the memories of the family we once were. Moving forward, I have to try to remember her in that light, and not as the person who cheated. I can't carry hate in my heart. At some point, I need to forgive her for my own peace of mind, so I can move on. Up until her infidelity, I believed we had a good marriage. We were intimate every day, spent lots of quality time together, and rarely fought. We sacrificed for each other willingly. I was open with her, and I believed she was open with me. But now, in light of her betrayal, I can't see her the same way. The meeting with her was tough. Her sister had warned me that she wasn't in a good state, and she was right. My soon-to-be ex-wife looked like she had imploded. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face swollen, and her hair was unkempt. She looked so much smaller, like the life had been drained out of her. I doubt she had eaten or slept much in the past week. We sat down, and she was shaking, unable to get words out without breaking down in tears. I felt surprisingly calm. I felt for her pain, but not as a spouse. I felt like I was watching an actor in a movie. It was clear to me that I probably no longer loved her. I sat there and waited for her to gather herself enough to speak. When she did start talking, it was as though a dam burst. She apologized repeatedly, but surprisingly, she didn't try to make excuses or shift the blame to me. Her sister also cried, sometimes berating her. It became clear that her sister had warned her this would happen. Apparently, her sister had cheated on her fiancé, and it had caused her a midlife crisis. This triggered a lot of thinking about cheating for my wife, and eventually, she gave in to an infatuation and a crush on the other man. She justified it by telling herself she deserved the affair and that it wouldn't cause lasting harm. She convinced herself that it was just a temporary fling and everything would go back to normal. The affair partner was already out of the picture by the time I confronted her, having ended things about a month and a half earlier. I had her phone, and when I blocked the man's number, old messages started flooding in. She had been trying to reach out to me, but I hadn't responded. When I confronted her, she started to realize that this was probably the end. She understood the gravity of the situation and accepted that her actions had ruined our marriage and would impact our children's lives forever. She begged for a second chance, but I told her I didn't believe her. I didn't trust her anymore, and I didn't believe anything she said. She asked what she could do to fix it, but I told her she had broken it, and if she didn't know how to fix it, how could I provide a solution? She conceded that if the roles were reversed, she probably wouldn't forgive me either. I told her about the STI and DNA tests I had arranged. This made her break down even further. She insisted this was the only time she had cheated, but I couldn't trust her anymore. She even offered me an open marriage, giving me full access to her communications 24/7, but I turned that down. I didn't want to live like that. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't be with her again, not in any meaningful way. I told her I was done, that the marriage was over, and I would be proceeding with the divorce. By the end of the meeting, after hours of tears and emotional pleas, I told her we needed to go no contact for a while. I already filed for divorce and made my decision. She couldn't undo what she had done. If she had wanted to avoid this, she never should have cheated. The love I once had for her had died. I didn't recognize the person she had become, and I no longer wanted to fight for a broken family. We both cried as she left, and she had a massive nosebleed as we were saying goodbye. She passed out in my arms, but I managed to catch her. I drove her to the ER with her sister, and I stayed until I knew she would be okay. Afterward, she started telling everyone what had happened. Dave, the affair partner's wife, called me this morning to confirm what my wife had said. I sent her copies of some of the evidence. She kicked her husband out, and now she wants to meet with me to look over more evidence. I'm not sure I'm ready for that conversation. I feel like a piece of crap right now. I haven't been able to sleep, and cracks are forming in my resolve. Despite everything, I feel guilty, like I need to fix this somehow. Why do I feel so responsible for something that isn't mine to fix? Everyone around me says I should give her a second chance, but I think it's better to get the pain over with so we can start healing and move on with our lives. In the end, there's no revenge, no resolution, no peace. Just more pain for everyone involved. I feel lost and unsure of what to do,